for Muslim women. What steps are you taking to ensure that that doesn't happen over here?
Yeah. Okay. As I said, I was one of the people who signed the written declaration in the Parliament. The French position. I mean, I think the French position is inherently racist. I mean, they do have a justification in that France is a secular state, and therefore they don't believe that they should have any religious symbols worn in schools or public places. They're very disingenuous about this because they don't actually object to Christian religious symbols. I mean, they don't actually object to people wearing crosses and that kind of thing. So it does have very racist overtones the way they interpret it, and whether you view the hijab as a religious symbol or not. I mean, that was what this particular thing was about, and that was what our written declaration was about. Very much supporting the right of Muslim women to wear the hijab, and indeed, other religions to wear things which are appropriate to their religion, which is my perspective. I mean, I think, I don't think there should be discrimination, and I think people should have the freedom to, wear what they like, provided it's decent, and I believe that very strongly, actually, and I would stand up for that always.
Are you taking steps to ensure that EU doesn't make it a law which is Europe-wide, and
there is absolutely no indication at the moment that the EU is going to make it the French position EU-wide. If there was ever any hint of it, I mean, I would certainly be up there doing my very best to stop it, as would a lot of other colleagues as well.
I have a question for the Green Party candidate as well, if that's all right. Going back to the green issues, is the Green Party lobbying the government to give grants to people to put PV panels on roofs, not measly £400, which you have to jump through hoops to get at the moment?
Yes.
And the permitted development rights don't go far enough to allow you to put solar panels on your roof.
No, you're right. And in fact, Sohail was also correct in saying that there is obviously scope for legislation. And it's got to be the right legislation for a start, and then you've got to be able to implement it. We've seen that this government's grant has run out, within a couple of weeks, and it might be an annual fund that they've got there. So people don't have enough to even do their own micro-generation. I think the other point, I mean, one of the initiatives that Jean Lambert has been pushing very strongly, and she's written a report on this, which you can find on her website, is to do with home insulation. So there's a lot of cavity walls without insulation, which can be filled, and that will also reduce energy wastage from the home. So when you think about that, but this government has a habit actually of pursuing very tokenistic short-term gestures. I mean, think about the car scrappage scheme. Again, if you think about the amount of energy that goes into constructing a vehicle, all the steam that's required, all the raw materials that's required, it isn't going to be cost effective for everybody to be replacing their car simply if they've got a cash incentive to do so. It's much better for us to get into a state of mind, this is the sort of the quality of life issue again, where we're repairing things. We should have a repair industry up and running again. People should be thinking about using things for as long as possible, because there's the so-called embedded energy in a vehicle. And so let's get to a state where instead of it being cool to be sort of driving a new car with a new number plate, it's actually cool, if whatever we want to call it. Yeah, it's a status symbol to be keeping something on the road for as long as possible. And I think the equation that has to be looked at is not just what's coming out of the engine. If that person is determined to be driving, it's overall what is the cost to the earth, including scrapping a car and having to buy a new one. What is the cost to the earth? We can't afford to be going on like that.
My question more is with regards to microgeneration.
Yes.
And instead of building a nuclear station,
yes,
if government gave grants to people to put PV panels, it would take away the need to, well, in long run, and it will be much greener as well, rather than having a nuclear station. So is the Green Party working towards that, or is that not the issue the Green Party is covering? No?
The answer to your question is yes.
Okay.
Thanks. I think Sohail wanted to come back on your previous question.
Just want to come to this point about the hijab and what France has done. I think it's not wise for us to say when the European Parliament tries to propose a ban on hijab, then we will act. I'm afraid that's too late. France has done something which is racist, full stop. Let's not try to give them any excuses. I've written to the French ambassador when they applied this racist law, and I asked him on what basis did he determine the hijab to be a religious symbol. You know what reply I got? No reply, because you're not going to get a coherent reply from a racist. What we need to do is to see British MEPs, which they haven't done, is to uphold British ethics, British way of life in the European Parliament, and push a motion to take France to the European Court for racism. It's as simple as that. And we haven't done that, and that's what we should be doing. If we really cared about it, and this is the term, isn't it? If we really care, not if we talk we care, but if we really care, and we really care about racism, we should be fighting against it in all its forms, wherever it occurs, whenever it occurs. Thank you very much.
Questions to actually everybody on the panel, really, because Europe is actually facing a problem, has been facing a problem for a long time about people coming across the borders. The issues about are we to become a fortress Europe or not, or what are the solutions to the problems that we are facing? Because obviously these people are migrants, economic migrants, and it's going to get worse because of the situation that the world is in at the moment. We've seen a huge influx. We've recently heard on the news that people from Afghanistan are also sort of now in mass numbers coming into Europe. What is your views and what are your party's views about how you're going to deal with this situation?
Okay. Would you like to take it first? Sure. Well, I mean, the EU is pursuing a blue card system, and the trouble is, you know, in terms of it might be better than what the UK government is doing, but essentially we need to be moving towards something which is qualitative. Okay, you may want to have some kind of managed process, but we've got to make sure you're treating people as human beings. That's to say, if somebody comes to this country to work and they're benefiting us, not in terms of the economy, leave that aside, just in terms of the benefit to us, right, and benefiting themselves. And if they wish to have a family here, then they should not be penalized from doing so. And moreover, if a student finds that he wants to work here, then that also is a possibility. So we need to move to a situation also where, you know, the Green Party frames the whole immigration debate in more historical terms, in more social justice terms, in terms of the reasons why people are fleeing. And I mentioned earlier that it isn't just economic migration. A lot of it is fighting for their lives. We have to bear that in mind. And so we have a duty, we have an obligation under you know, human rights framework, you know, not to turn people away who are in those situations. So we need to welcome them, and we need to think twice about the fact that so much, you know, of the resources of this country historically, and even now as we speak, yes, is to the loss of other people around the world. You know, there are going to be potentially more wars in the future, or more injustice occurring for natural resources, the main one being water, and not just space. So let's think holistically. I mean, in this country, again, we're fantastically integrated. When we have even terror-type scenarios, terrible and unconscionable that they are, I actually find London is very resilient. And I think that part of that is, the resilience is because of our diversity and our toleration and understanding and automatic identification with people around the world, not even simply because we happen to share their ethnicity. It's because we have a kind of a human identity, and that is a common spirit. If I, very quickly, quick anecdote, when I pick up the phone and ask, you know, for train information, and I'm clearly being put through to Delhi, and that person is both speaks better English and is educated and proud of what they're doing, so I understand that we're living in a very sort of global milieu. And when you frame it in those ways, you know, let's cut through, you know, all the xenophobia. Let's think, you know, let's be friendly, let's be positive, let's find ways of managing the whole population. And if we're going to be asking people to integrate and speak, you know, whatever